Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and tonight's guest is Sofia Smallstorm. Now, Sofia's website is available at aboutthesky.com, and she has just a bounty of topics here, everything from weather modification, geoengineering, global warming, population control, Morgellons, body snatchers, media tricks, all sorts of stuff, even her own blog there if you'd like to know more. And also she has a website called Avatar Products. Now, I went to this website earlier today and it wasn't working, but hopefully it'll be back up again soon. And I also want to let you know that our website, leakproject.com, we've had a lot of people ask me recently when our store is going to be up because I've been promoting this now for quite some time. Well, we finally got it up and it's ready to go. Just go to leakproject.com/shop and you'll be able to see our new shirts, high quality decals. We've got discounts with many of the guests we've had on the show with their products, like Gerald Clark from GeraldClark77.com, as well as Krista Clark from Artistic Vegan. We're working something out with Doc Ram, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and also check out the Juice Plus promotions that we're offering right now in pill form, guys. How cool is this? You can get 30 fruits and vegetables in pill form. Think about that for a minute. Not synthetic BS, but real fruits and vegetables condensed into pill form, 30 of them, and just a couple pills a day. So check that out on our website, and also go to youtube.com/clandestine Time Lord. If you subscribe to YouTube, you'll get access to all the latest podcasts absolutely free. And we're offering extra promotions on our website at Leak Project, where we do offer certain podcasts downloadable for free, ad-free as well. So I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are, and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon. So I'm on your website right now, aboutthesky.com. Maybe, Sophia, you could tell us a little bit about yourself and why you got into chemtrails. And also, you've kind of gone from chemtrails to now something even bigger and nastier, right?
Well, I wouldn't say nastier. I mean, this is all qualitative, isn't it? Comparative. Mm-hmm. But yes, I did start out actually in 9/11 analysis, and then I kind of switched over to chemtrails because they were very rampant and sort of confounding. And from there, I started to see that they had their real goals, you could say. They're not conscious, of course, but the goals seem to be to integrate a kind of synthetic biology in the living organisms of the world. And I became aware that synthetic biology was a close cousin of radiation biology, and that it seemed that everything was being moved into and toward becoming frequency responsive. So we do have this, explosion of frequency around us in terms of the wireless industry, and everybody is clearly addicted to that. And I think there's a reason for this addiction. We're voluntarily participating in frequency fondness, you could say.
Okay, so what does that mean essentially? I mean, do you think that we're kind of like plugged into an AI system and we basically don't even realize it, kind of frequencies they'll send out will make people think certain ways overall? Or
I think it's deeper than that. The biological use of frequency in the body is upon crystalline forms. There is a relationship between crystals and voltage that is recognized in the piezoelectric effect. The piezoelectricity is that it's a wireless form of electricity, in that when you place a frequency upon a crystal, it will generate a voltage, and when you place a voltage on a crystal, it will generate a frequency. We already use piezoelectricity. We have crystalline proteins in our DNA. We've got a lot of crystalline substances in our bones and so forth, and we evidently use these crystals in our basic biochemical work. Okay, I'm not a scientist, so I can't go into the depths of the details, but it's already something the body uses. But the more you proliferate crystalline forms into biological organisms, and the more frequencies you put on these organisms, you're going to start changing the way the biology works. And that's what I think is at the root of all this.
Now, when it was pitched to the federal government as a form of keeping global warming at bay, essentially, do you think that everybody knows about this? I mean, obviously there's multiple applications for chemtrails. They've got weather changing opportunities, seeding the clouds for rain, causing drought, etc. So they can apply multiple things. Do you think they're beta testing certain areas to do this, or do you think it's kind of on a global scale? Or, I mean, is there any science to back this up?
Well, I don't really know what you mean by science, because it's quite clear that the science that's published and reported on and shared as and thought to be, reliable, commendable, worthy of distinction and passing it along in universities and on TV. This is a fraudulent science. It has elements of accuracy in it, but it's being deployed and used in very fraudulent ways. And I'm not, in that regard, any kind of scientist. And I don't think that when you put common sense to science, you're going to get any kind of equation that works. Anybody can see in the world that we have streaky, gunky clouds, and that our picturesque clouds, the puffy ones, the cumulonimbus, and the various integrated forms of clouds that we used to see, cumulostratus, cirrostratus, these have all disappeared. They're permanently gone. We're never going to see a mare's tail in the sky again. That used to be a form of cirrus cloud that appeared late in the evening and was at very high altitude, 35, 40,000 feet, and looked like a mare's tail. You don't see that. You see an artificial cirrus form now all the time at a much lower altitude, and it's composed of, materials that are artificially gathered, we could say. The premise remains the same in that they've studied cloud formation using condensation nuclei, and they've learned how to use atmospheric moisture, pull it together, make it very, very fine in terms of the droplet size, and thereby they get a haze. This is the typical white haze we see. But there's weather control, afoot. There's the deployment of materials which ultimately descend earthward, and they embed themselves in living forms. And that is all nanobiology, the artificial synthetic biology going to work in the living things that are dependent on the earth and its water and its soil and the products of soil for sustenance.
I talked to Dr. Richard Allen Miller yesterday, and he's got an IQ which is literally off the charts. He's been doing research into many fields for many years, and he was talking about some bio-API stuff. And one thing that I find interesting is you said science is not valid, yet there's plenty of valid science out there. I did a show the other day where we basically compiled that there's 6 corporations that control about 90% of the scientific data. So obviously it can be skewed, but there's still some pretty good stuff out there. And I've even seen white papers and documents about the certain products and chemicals and chemtrails and the applications that they're used for. And it's some pretty nasty stuff. Now, what I was referring to, though, is you were talking about the crystalline, essentially. So I was wondering if you had any insider info to actually show those nanoparticulates that many people can see fall from the skies, especially if you've got polarized sunglasses on at the time, that can actually verify, yep, this is some type of crystalline substance. And then what they do is they take the Wi-Fi or the signal from this tower or that tower to affect your personality, essentially.
Well, to start with, you can't see anything that's nano. Nano is less than a micron in size. And nano is the realm in which the operations are taking place that are altering biology. That's what I'm theorizing here. So what you're seeing...
True nano, okay.
Yeah, what you're seeing that's dropping is people see fibrous masses that accumulate on balcony railings and car antennas. And you can look in the microscope and see materials that are not identifiable in laboratories in the sense that they match any known natural fiber. So the fibers appear to be polymer-based and synthetic. And then there are, of course, other materials in chemtrails as well. And there are other people who've done a lot more work on this than I have in recent years. I kind of left the whole chemtrail scene. I left that part of my website up because it was represented a lot of work and there was good basic information there. But to start looking into how chemtrails dovetail with many other agendas makes more sense to me at this point than simply studying them by themselves and hoping that they're going to stop. I mean, nobody's going to stop spraying chemtrails unless there's some kind of saturation that's already been achieved and the program can be converted into something else that's achieving another goal on the next level. So we're obviously in a world that has a lot going on that is redesigning our environment and us within our own cellular structure.
Just this very dark world that we live in. Where are you pointing your energy now?
Well, I've written about, I guess I have a newsletter that people can subscribe to, and in that I cover on a monthly basis some of the stuff I'm falling into. And it's really just kind of a self-propelled, accidental, by accident I come across something and start getting into it. So one of the things that caused a big splash was the underground bases. And I have reason to believe, again, I could be wrong, but the habitats being created underground are going to be the retreat to which the executors of these programs will go when there is enough destruction that is sort of like self-perpetuating above ground. Because right now there's a tremendous amount of resilience in biology, and it always seems to know how to spring back in some way. Even though it's been debilitated, it'll still spring back. And I think that when you look at the network of caves and caverns, underground rivers, the presence of what's called primary water, we live on secondary water up here. The evaporation and rain cycle is just, it's minuscule. It's peanuts compared to what is underground, you know, billions and billions of gallons of fresh water being replenished, self-replenishing water. That's the real water supply, and yet we're not allowed access to it. But the CERN program in Europe, which has to do with nuclear radiation, the opening of various tunnels, the tunneling itself isn't, they tell us on the surface that this is simply a little train tunnel, or it's a tunnel for cars through a mountain pass. But the amount of time it takes to build these tunnels and the amount of hidden rooms and passageways and doors and levels that they have speaks to the tunnels being a portal or entry to a much more giant scale habitat, and that will be equipped by nuclear power most likely. There were a lot of missing nuclear reactors. After the Arab oil embargo, the United States got all gung-ho on nuclear power. And for instance, the Tennessee Valley Authority, Tennessee is not a big state, it commissioned the erection of all these nuclear power facilities, some 17 of them, and only 5 actually were completed. So 12 of them were begun, in some cases reactors delivered, and never removed. And the cave system and the system of underground lakes and rivers is enormous underneath Tennessee, Virginia, Indiana. It goes all the way down to Alabama. The mountain ranges are what we see on top, and underneath you're looking at excavations that were formed either naturally or somehow that are big enough to fly planes in. So this, I think, is where the world, the controlling world, is going to go. And you'll see at the Denver airport all kinds of murals and a lot of artwork and symbolism of the underworld depicted. So there is an underworld culture, and the structure for it has been built over many, many years. And whatever happens to the above ground life is going to be maybe even watched through wireless means, and thereby, you know, controlled, made sure that it'll deteriorate further. And that's a selection process, I think. I don't think that this is depopulation per se. It's an effort to study responses, because that's always been of interest in science. And then they will attempt to use what's left, what salvages itself, as a prototype for further life forms that are governed by technical engineering.
Well, and do you think that there could be people down there like right now that are not coming up just because they've been down there so long that they're used to a different environment, essentially?
Well, not because they're used to a different environment, but it, you know, that Iron Mountain, for instance, has all kinds of companies with their own generators and their data banks. There are staffs of people down there already. This is where the storage is for the Earth's most important, the world's most important, you know, documentation is being transferred, and it's all climate controlled. It's extremely impenetrable. The rock that shields these underground spaces can't be penetrated by electromagnetic weaponry or explosion or anything else. So down there is going to be the safest place. And yes, I think there are already people down there.
And I'm looking at your website right now. You put something together about the Apple headquarters in California and how it looks like fertility. Essentially, you look at the egg and then the sperm. Is that kind of what you put together here?
That's actually material that I learned from another friend who does a lot of work on wireless Wi-Fi in schools in particular. And so yes, Apple headquarters, let me just go there myself so that I can look at it. Apple headquarters is in Cupertino, and if you study the effect on cells by wireless frequencies, you will soon learn that they are tissue shattering. Okay, the human body and other living things are accustomed to frequencies that run in the 7 to 12 hertz range. Now that's 7 to 12 cycles per second. That is not a very high oscillation at all. And if the cells are tempered to that, it means everything in them resonates to and can handle that very, you could call it a gentle wave. But when you start deploying frequencies that don't occur in nature, frequencies along the order of 1 billion, 2 billion, 5 billion hertz, this is the gigahertz range. So megahertz means thousands of hertz, gigahertz means billions of hertz. So the average iPhone is in the 2 gigahertz range. Wi-Fi is 2.4 billion cycles per second. You compare that to 7 cycles. That's what your brain likes, 7 to 12 cycles. So what's happening in your body? You're getting cell membrane breakdown. You're getting, these are what one researcher called body shattering harmonics. And people are exposing themselves to this every single day. And what people don't realize is that you have 75 to 100 trillion cells, and they're being damaged by these frequencies. They're losing their cellular membrane integrity, which means that they can't keep things out and in. Proteins that belong inside the cell, enzymes that do certain kinds of work inside the cell are flooding out of the cell into the bloodstream, where they're then encountering other tissues and doing damage, because the body has specific proteins and enzymes for specific areas. And you can't just mix it all up. So how that starts to manifest itself in life is that you start feeling bad. And unfortunately, this bad feeling, which can be jitteriness, it can be pain, headaches, myalgia, different kinds of neuropathy, interruption of basic functionality. It's attributed to stress, old age. Doctors don't know how to diagnose this. They remain mystified and put you on this drug or that therapy. And nobody's attributing it to the effect of super high frequencies in our daily lives that are causing havoc on the cellular level and dysfunctionality of body metabolism.
Now, also, I guess if you look at all the electronics, you've got smart TVs, you've got smart meters. I see cell phone towers right next to schools a lot of times. It seems like it's almost orchestrated by design.
Yes, there's a massive amount of experimentation taking place, and it is true that cell towers are often located right next to or behind schools. What happens is that immunologically and neurologically, the body doesn't mature until the person is, an adult, basically. This is why we have prolonged childhood in the human species, because the amount of work that needs to be done, the functionality level of the mature specimen is complex, and therefore there's a tremendous developmental phase, which is called childhood. So children do not have, my word for it is green. They have green tissues. You've heard that they have green bones, and they're not done. They're not fully baked until they're about 18 years old. And this applies to the neurology as well. So in the case of the iPad, for instance, the children sit in school, and all of their instruction is now not being given by teachers so much as it's being given over the internet. So they all have textbooks that are being downloaded, and they sit with these iPads pressed against their bellies. And very sort of strangely, oddly, the antenna for the iPad is at the bottom, not at the top, where you'd think it would get the best signal. But it gets it from the bottom, which is right against the children's abdominal area. In the boy's case, it would be next to the reproductive organs, the testes in particular, and the girl's case, right up against the ovaries. And if you look at a conception, when an egg is fertilized by a sperm, it immediately goes through what's called the zona response. It has a number of layers on the outside which are pliable so that sperm can penetrate. But the moment the first sperm gets in, those layers fuse together and they harden. And so the egg develops a kind of shell. And you look at the Apple headquarters diagram, which is on my blog page, Apple and Fertility is the link title. And you see that the Apple headquarters looks very much like a follicle, an egg, a human egg. And it's got all these squiggly little pathways around it, which are the little spermies going for the egg. And the egg itself is the building itself is round, circular, and it's obviously concrete. So that's the shell. And you're looking at the zonal response. So the diagram of human conception as the egg is penetrated and those outer membranes fuse is the layout of Apple headquarters in Cupertino. And then they use the 666 all the time, and they sell their technologies for 666, dollars. So this, you can read a lot more at fullertoninformer.com. That is Joe Imbriano's website. He has really, really delved into this, and it's pretty shocking. There's a new technology coming. I suspect it's going to be used with this 5G that they're rolling out now. And the new technology is called Artemis. Artemis was the goddess of chastity, virginity, and the hunt. And the Artemis gizmos, devices, will be on every lamppost, every building, and they're small. And they are going to emit the frequencies. They're going to go hunting for devices. So Artemis was the Greek goddess of the hunt. And the Artemis technology will find the wireless devices and then bathe them with a radiation field. So the cell towers, I suspect, are going to be turned over for some other use, which is why they were equipped with large power output to start with. And these smaller devices of the 5G kind that we've already been told by the government that this is going to be divine and it's going to be on every light post, on every building. So I think this is going to be the Artemis technology. And very, again, suspiciously, the logo of Artemis, it looks like the Mercedes-Benz crest without the circle around it. But if you invert that, that is the exact design of the female reproductive tract. So the Artemis logo is the female reproductive organs flipped upside down. So there you have the Greek goddess of chastity, virginity, and the hunt.
So, and they flip it upside down, so that's going to have the anti-effect, essentially, of fertility.
Right, okay. Which is chastity. Chastity means no sex.
Wow. That's just the way they put it together behind the scenes. It's like I wonder, whoever's doing this must be very dogmatic, or there's something above them that's creating it, because they just seem to follow these rituals that go back way past Christianity, even before the Greek times. You can get into the Vedic texts and some of the ancient Hebrew, or not Hebrew, but some of the ancient Hindu gods. So I wonder who's controlling this at the top levels.
Well, we're all wondering, right?
It's the $1 million question. I ask everybody that question.
Yeah, everybody has their theories, and I don't think these theories should all be discussed and bantered about, all over the internet. They are, but I don't need hate mail because I think it's this or that. So this is the question, as you say, and the fact is we see the evidence all around us.
You think it's like an artificial intelligence that might have taken over?
Well, I don't know. How do I know that? It's definitely not in favor of supporting human thriving. There's levels of existence. You can survive, which is very basic. It reflects a struggle. Or you can thrive. And on our earth, we're not thriving, most of us. Most of the people here are in a deep struggle on some level. It could be economic, it may be psychic. There are a lot of different conflicts and assaults that are levied on us all the time. I see more and more people now who are not considered old, and they are dealing with very serious health issues, the decline of tissues and bones. The biological degeneration is setting in at younger and younger ages. People are having hip replacements in their 40s now and losing, mental function. The degeneration of neurology is just it's off the charts. And then, of course, you have cancers and tissues that are being injured by people who are very, unaware of the exposures they're giving themselves. So if you look at what really disease is, and I'm starting to get into this as well, disease of any kind it originates with energy deficiency on the cellular level. The cell's energy is adenosine triphosphate, also known as ATP. And cells who can't make enough ATP to survive end up reverting to a throwback mechanism for energy, which is sugar-based. It's done in the cytoplasm, not the nucleus. The nucleus is where ATP is created. But when you just can't make ATP, you're that sick, that fatigued, you go to glycolysis. Using enzymes, you make energy out of glucose, and you can't do that forever. So what happens is cancer cells deploy certain mechanisms to perpetuate. They go into what's called unregulated cell division, and they keep dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing. That's a tumor. And then you also get this very thick protein shield around the outside of the cancer cell because it's in defense mode. It's defending against any kind of invasion. And it reverts into this fermentation process, glycolysis, using sugar. So that all originates because of energy deficiency. Cancer is an energy deficiency disease, a metabolic disease. So is everything else. It all starts with the biology failing because there just isn't enough energy available.
Not enough energy available. So essentially, all of this additional artificial tech is kind of taking away a lot of the overall, I guess you could say, the natural vibe, the original vibrational frequencies that are harmonious have now been hijacked, essentially, so there's not enough energy to go around.
Well, I would say it like this, that the natural frequencies that the body needs in order to thrive have been displaced by exposure to very high frequencies, which are destructive to the tissues and membranes. The cells, radiation frequencies are not just squiggles on pieces of paper. They are actual three-dimensional, like a slinky. Remember the slinky, if you open it up?
Oh, yeah.
That waveform, that's what a wave is. A wave is a cylindrical, like a drill. And when it is moving at very high oscillations, it's drilling into your cells. It's blasting your cells. Your cells are imploding from this force. Their membranes are shattering, and they can't handle this.
So what do people do to protect themselves? I mean, have you heard of the, I think it's called a Faraday cage?
Yeah, that's a last-ditch measure. You can shield. A lot of people who are very frequency sensitive, and that becomes the case. Eventually, your body can't take it anymore. All assault stresses end up taking their toll on the body. I knew a guy who worked at a nuclear plant, and he was a mechanical engineer, and he worked there for years. And then one day, he was probably about 50, let's say. He got physically injured. A pipe fell on his head, and it caused a concussion. And so you recover from that eventually. He took rest, and after that one accident where this pipe struck him on the head, he became chemically sensitive. He couldn't sit in front of a computer. He couldn't go anywhere near a cell phone or Wi-Fi or any of that. He couldn't even handle the electromagnetic fields coming out of wires and computers because of current running. So he was mystified. And I explained to him, listen, all it takes is one more trauma on the load that you've already had. Here he was at a nuclear plant, which was causing him damage that he didn't know about. And then, boom, a pipe on his head falling. That's what turned him into a super sensitive person. Now his entire life would have to change. He basically had to crawl into a Faraday cage and live totally shielded.
Are there foods and stuff that you've looked into or different types of vitamins and supplements that you can take to kind of keep your immune system and nervous system healthier?
You can do any number of things. You can limit your exposure. That's the smartest thing to do. There's no sense, for instance, if you must have Wi-Fi because you want to roam with your laptop from room to room, you don't want to be trapped at your desk on a wired computer, then turn that Wi-Fi off at night. Because at night, your body is going into deep cellular repair mode. In fact, it's such a deep restoration mode that your body makes you lie down and not move for 7 to 8 hours. It needs that time and space to do deep, deep tissue restoration. So when you have a Wi-Fi router in your house or your bedroom, I knew a woman who had the thing under her bed. Didn't realize it till I said, why is it under your bed? And she couldn't even sleep. People attribute the sleeplessness to stress, worry, and yeah, when you're awake, you'll worry about stuff, especially if you realize I need sleep and I can't get it. So anyway, you have to start minimizing exposure. That's the end of the spectrum I would start at, rather than spending all my money on vitamins and supplements. That, of course, can't hurt, but why not just reduce your exposure?
Well, it's certainly Seems like the most common sense thing to do is get rid of the exposure as much as possible. And I'm looking at your blog right now, and you talk about, or at least there's some videos on your blog talking about the flat Earth. Do you believe in that theory?
I have started to look into the possibility that we don't live on a ball, and it makes sense. When you really start getting into it and you understand how the sun and the moon travel over the Earth plane and how day and night are caused and what sunset really is, you just have to shut off your first set of beliefs and start trying on these other ones. And nobody has to believe in the flat Earth, but I was begged by certain friends to please look at it, and I did. And I thought, you know what? There were many things about the ball Earth that as a child made absolutely no sense to me. Absolutely no sense at all. And no teacher could explain it well enough. And I accepted the ball Earth theory because it's pumped into our faces all the time. I mean, every logo from AT&T, you see the Earth, 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 save the Earth. You know, you see all over the design of the Earth with the continents and the ocean. Anyway, start looking at the flat Earth and it starts making a new kind of sense. There's a new video that just hit the world, which is about the scale of things. What we consider to be mountains are really broken off ancient trees. What we consider to be mesas are tree stumps. And the scale of everything has changed. It's all become miniature. And so the question is why? And that's what I'm trying to look into now. But again, these are kind of our own pursuits. I don't get paid to do this. I do sell things in my online store, avatarproducts.com, and I try to offer some amelioration. Magnesium cream takes a lot of pain and inflammation away better than just about anything else I've ever used. And then I have those cell phone shields. So you can shield your cell phone while you're carrying it around in your pocket. You can shield your body from it because it's burping every few seconds looking for a tower. So these are simple things that, you know, we can do. But the flat Earth is something we can think about if we want to. Nobody's forcing anyone to do anything here.
You know, in the flat Earth theory, I don't know enough about it to give a good debate either way, except for I've seen planets with telescopes that are around, and, you know, obviously all the images that I've seen my whole life with NASA and other forms like JPL, etc. Now, if all of that is CGI, and if we are in this flat Earth type scenario, what would be the things that you would say have not necessarily convinced you, but made you think that the Earth is flat? If you were going to take 5 or 6 things that you could say, yep, these are the top 5, and that would possibly convert somebody else, what would those be?
Well, I was curious as to why flights that went from, for instance, Australia to South America, Chile, they seem to always refuel in Billings, Montana, or Vancouver over North America. That doesn't make any sense on a ball Earth. You would think, why do they not just fly right over the ocean? But they all go to North America to refuel, and it's a very long flight. So when you look at those flight paths, that starts boggling your mind. And then when you study how the seasons really work on the flat Earth, it makes so much more sense.
How do they work?
Well, if you imagine the flat Earth as a dinner plate, and Antarctica is said to be around the outer edge. It's the ice wall. It's everywhere. It's not in one spot. It's everywhere around the dinner plate. This is a very simplistic flat Earth diagram. So if you told people, we live in a melted puddle, those would be the oceans with land masses, and there's this big old ice wall on the edge. Any way you go, you're going to run into the ice wall, and don't go over it because we don't know what's on the other side. Well, everybody and their brother would be sailing over to the ice wall and trying to climb it and find out what's on the other side, right? Don't you think?
Sure.
But they have a treaty, the Antarctic Treaty, signed by some 58 countries. They have all kinds of heavy guarding of Antarctica. A normal person can't get within 500 miles of the place or something like that. And it's just off bounds. Now, I know 2 people who were on Antarctica. One was a broadcast engineer. He was on a radio broadcasting base, but it was at the very edge of Antarctica. And the other one was a chef at some military facility or something. And he was on, they only keep you there for a very short time. And it would be hard because the climate is very cold. So people do get to go there, but they don't get to roam around by any means. And nobody really knows where they are. They're thinking they are on the southernmost continent when they're really on a big old ice shelf that surrounds the whole of the dinner plate. So the sun apparently makes a spiral between the Tropic of Cancer, which is in what the Ball Earth calls the Northern Hemisphere, and the Tropic of Capricorn, which is what is called the Southern Hemisphere on the Ball Earth. So the sun makes a 24-hour cycle, and when it's nearing the Tropic of Capricorn, it's coming northward, inward to the dinner plate. Those land masses are getting their spring, warming into summer. And at the summer solstice in June, the sun hits the Tropic of Capricorn, and it starts to make its spirals outward again and head toward the Tropic of Cancer, and starts to head out toward the Tropic of Capricorn. So when it's going out to the Tropic of Capricorn, those land masses get their spring and summer. We start getting our fall and winter. So when it's out at the Tropic of Capricorn, we have December and December 21st. And then it starts coming back in. We get longer days and all of that good stuff. So that's really how it works. And it takes the sun 24 hours to make that circle. Now, you would argue, well, wait a minute. When it's doing the inner portion of the dinner plate, it's making the circles in a shorter amount of time, isn't it? But the answer is no. It's actually moving more slowly because it doesn't have as much distance to cover in the 24-hour spiral. And when it's out at Tropic of Capricorn, it's going in much bigger spirals. So how is it able to do that in 24 hours? Well, the answer is it's got to be going faster and it's got to be higher up. But here's the thing. If you look at humanity, most of humanity lives between the equator and the Tropic of Cancer, where the sun moves the slowest. And very few people lived at the tip of South America, the tip of Africa and Australia. They now live there, but this is all artificial settling. You had a few native tribes like the Aborigines, the Maoris, the Bushmen of South Africa, but you did not have heavy population down there, and there must be some electromagnetic reason. Everything is electromagnetics. That's why frequency is so important. So all this to me represents a new way of thinking, and I have started to ask my own questions. For instance, I brought up something called sunrise sunset creep. People think that, I'll ask you, now listen carefully, when is the shortest day and longest night for us? When is it?
I don't know.
Well, you should know. It's supposed to be December 21st. That's the longest night and the shortest day, the winter solstice, right?
Okay.
Okay, so the opposite is true of June. June 21st is the longest day and the shortest night, right? Haven't you heard this?
Yeah, I think I have.
Okay. Well, I used to await December 21st because these early evenings when it gets so dark and everybody rushes home and it's depressing and cold and you want to have those evenings lengthening, right? I mean, those days lengthening. So you wait for December 21st, and on December 22nd you think, great, now we're going to get longer days because the 21st is behind us. The fact is that the evenings continue to come later on the week of December 7th. It's actually the 11th or 12th. You start getting, if you look at any nautical or other kind of chart, you will notice that sunrise continues to be later and later in the morning until January 11th, and yet sunset starts to refresh and become later on December 11th. So it doesn't concentrate, it has nothing to do with the 21st. The 21st simply is the measure of the longest night and the shortest day. So why is it starting on the 11th? And then it rectifies completely on January 11th. And the same thing for the summer. The days start getting shorter around the 11th and the 11th of June and 11th of July. So there is something that's going on, and this cannot be explained on the ball Earth. It can only be explained on the flat Earth in terms of some kind of electromagnetic wobble that the sun must go through when it hits that outer Capricorn and the inner Cancer. And then this is why we have this discrepancy that takes a month to adjust. I can't explain it beyond that. I've taken it to flat Earth people, and I've only found one addressing of this, and it wasn't addressed in this way. But there is a boing or a wobble on the magnetic map of the Earth that Cami and Bob Nodal just worked on for over a year. And that's a video on my blog too. It's at 6 minutes and 35 seconds in that video. But anyway, so these are the questions I've been asking. You know, you can explain the Ice Age in a much better way based on the flat Earth rather than the ball Earth. And it's all fascinating.
It is fascinating. And I'm looking at a page right now on Wikipedia of people that have supposedly gone around the world, circumnavigations. And, you know, obviously Wikipedia, the internet, it's like a bathroom wall. Anybody can write anything about anyone. Yet a few months ago, a very close family member of mine passed away, and I met somebody that I didn't know I had connections with that actually has several patents on night vision, as well as made cameras that actually were on certain flights that went around the world, as well as cameras that went to the moon. His name is Edward Relder. And this guy has worked with multiple defense agencies. He's, I think, about 90 years old. He's a super brilliant, still quick as a tack. And he actually said that he made the cameras for certain flights that went around the world. Now, the stuff that you're talking to me about, I'm listening to you and I hear you. And I can't explain those things. I'm agnostic. Do I think that the Earth is flat? No, I think that it's round. But what do you say when you talk to people, or what would you say if you talked to somebody that said they actually made the camera? I don't think that he's a shill. He's a family member of mine. I don't see why he would lie to me about something like that.
No, he wouldn't. But I knew someone who worked at Perkin-Elmer, and they made the lens for the Hubble telescope. So what does that prove? Doesn't prove a thing. Doesn't prove that that lens was ever used, you know? I mean, I know someone else who's a very good friend at JPL finally confessed to him one day that everything he did was to alter images from quote-unquote space and make them juicier for purposes of government propaganda. But he said, every image I'm sent is not real. And that's all I do all day. I just alter images, CGI.
Well, I certainly wouldn't compare a Hubble telescope lens to somebody that actually designed the cameras that went around the world, but I can kind of understand where you're going with that. And I'm not trying to start a fight here or anything like that. I'm just trying to bring some other ideas out there, which definitely people need to question everything. That's our motto here at Leak Project, question everything and be the change you want to see. And there's some definite possibilities. Now, what else do you write about at aboutthisguy.com? Because you've hit on multiple genres and topics.
Yeah, I just post blog posts, and I do podcasts with people who have interesting things to say. I have a podcast page, and I do my newsletter. So my newsletter concentrates on different subjects every month. I just looked into a condition called rhabdomyolysis. Do you know what that is?
No, but it doesn't sound good.
It isn't very good. It's muscle cell death, and there's a new series of gyms. It's the fastest growing fitness explosion in the world. It's called CrossFit. Have you seen CrossFit?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so CrossFit encourages partner workouts, and they teach you to blow past your limits. And unfortunately, a lot of people work so hard at lifting and squatting and overwork their muscle groups at CrossFit because they're really working against someone else and against themselves. So
Okay.
let's say you and I went to CrossFit and we decided to do triceps workout. And you do one set of something, I do a set. You do a set, I do a set. You do a set, I do a set. Then we switch. We do a different kind of tricep exercise. And we just keep going and going and going. Now, you don't want me to be the one that wins in that I did one set that you couldn't keep up with and you had to quit. So the best you hope for is to come out even. And then you've had a great workout, right? So when you ignore the signs of fatigue coming from your muscles, which would be what in your experience?
Being in pain.
Pain, you feel that burn, you know, the burn of...
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the burn is when the respiration in your muscle cells has turned into fermentation. If you just take a quick jog down the street to the mailbox, you're going to be using oxygen-based energy. But if you run as hard as you can to the mailbox, and then the next mailbox, and the next mailbox, and your legs are burning, it means that the muscles that are moving your body in this exercise have a great demand on them. They're working as hard as they can because you want to run as fast and as far as you can. And you cannot do that forever. You're not going to be able to do that for 2 hours.
Right.
You're going to have to go back to a jog, which is respiration, not fermentation. So the burn is a short-lived capacity that your muscles have. And they also, if the demand is placed on them, regardless, they will then go into cannibalization. The muscles will actually ship some of their own proteins to the liver. The liver will turn those proteins into glucose, send them back to the muscles, and say, here's a little more glucose for you for fermentation. So let's imagine you're lost in the wilderness, and you have nothing to eat, you're starving, you're getting thinner and thinner, your muscles start eating themselves, as you crawl to where you think you might be rescued, right? So these different layers or levels of energy manufacturing, our body has them just in case it needs them. That last stage of muscle cannibalization might get you the last, half mile to where you're going to be rescued. You might find salvation, safety, whatever, right? So what happens in the body in CrossFit, and I'm not blaming CrossFit, I'm blaming the user, is that people will push their muscles to the point that their muscle cells will simply die on the spot. That's it, dead, nothing left. And a lot of CrossFit people come home, they jump into a bathtub full of ice water. This subdues the pain and perks them up again. And then they rest the next day. But in many instances, people end up with absolute non-function of a particular muscle group because they've just blown it out. And that means you can't even lift your arms to brush your teeth anymore if it's your triceps. And you end up in the ICU, you're intubated, you've got dialysis machines trying to help your kidneys filter the muscle proteins and enzymes that the crashed cell walls have now driven right into the blood. So rhabdomyolysis is this condition of sudden cell death. It has been discovered in people who have crush injuries when you're trapped under a bus or earthquake debris. It is also caused, though, if you can believe it, by statin drugs, as well as snake bite, excessive alcohol and drug use, marathon running. Anytime you push your body, you put too many demands on it, you can end up in rhabdo. And statin drugs are known to cause myalgia, which is muscle pain, because they are gunners for cholesterol. They shoot the cholesterol out of your cell walls. Cholesterol is a good thing in your body, actually. It's a repair material. And when it's taken out of the cell membranes, then the cell membranes become porous or permeable. And then the muscle proteins flow into the bloodstream, and they're not kept in the cells where they take oxygen to the nucleus. So you end up having non-functioning of your muscles in general. I'm talking about striated muscles. And this is a condition that caused me great fascination because at one time I ran a marathon without adequate training. And one of the typical signs of rhabdomyolysis is that your urine will be the color of coffee or Coca-Cola. And that's what I saw after the marathon. And I thought I was just dehydrated. But this is now affecting people the world over. 1 in 4 people in America is on statin drugs, and doctors do not understand that statin drugs cause rhabdomyolysis, and these people end up with muscle cell failure. They get weaker and weaker and weaker. And eventually, the muscles that allow you to breathe, the muscles that lift your chest wall, they too will die. So I find my way into many different rabbit holes. I'm looking at dialysis now.
Well, and once again, I'm on your website, aboutthisguy.com, and I'm on your blog section here. Do you put together most of these articles?
Well, again, they are material that I don't write and I don't make all those videos, but yes, I do put all those posts up.
Because you've got some great stuff on there. That's why I asked. I mean, you've got all sorts of guilt by association, no more driving, federal contracts shape the public mind. You talk about in the geoengineering phone call in the Netherlands, or the Pulse shooting in Orlando. So, I mean, you're definitely hitting on a lot of different topics on your website. I think that's great.
Thank you. Yes, I do. I put up stuff that I think is really important for people to know. And I put the source material there. I give a little blurb, usually with some of my own comments that may not be found elsewhere. A quick summary, a little introduction. I mean, I'm going to just take you to prostate resection. I was reading a book by a doctor who was trained traditionally at a med school and then refused to practice medicine. So you've heard, have you not, that as men get older, they get an enlarged prostate, right?
I've heard that, yes.
Okay, so what does that mean to you, enlarged prostate? What do you picture?
I would think somebody's prostate would be getting bigger.
Right. And that's as far as most people go. And they do understand that that enlarged prostate presses on the bladder, the urethra, and causes those men to have to urinate more frequently, right? So that's the discomfort of an enlarged prostate. And often men will have to go to the bathroom every hour. And this becomes embarrassing. It's difficult to do in some instances. You're not near a toilet, especially if you have to get up many times during the night. So really and truly, I've studied inflammation, and as I learned about prostate resection, I realized, no, the prostate isn't just enlarged, it's inflamed. That's what's happened. The prostate has become swollen. Why is it swollen? What is inflammation? And then I realized from other things I had looked at earlier that inflammation is the body's way of opening up tissues so that more repair materials can go through the blood vessels and be taken away by the lymph so that there's better transport, better delivery of the repair materials, and better removal of the wastes, right? So the body inflames an area because it's actually opening up channels. It also creates, in the cases of a sprain or a strain, some heat. That's in case there's a bacterial intrusion from broken skin. It creates rigidity and pain. Why is it doing that? When you sprain your ankle, your body puts it into rigidity and causes a lot of pain because the nerves are being impinged on by the swollen tissues. Your body's telling you, okay, I'm making this thing stiff and it's going to hurt because I don't want you to move it. I want you to get off it while I fix it. So what do the conventional trainers, coaches, doctors tell you? They tell you to ice, elevate, and compress. Actually, acronym is ICE. Why? Why do you want to freeze tissues and constrict them when your body is trying to make them bigger and open them up so it can fix that area? Why do you want to raise your leg and drain all the blood out of it, and your body is trying to get the blood over to that area so that the fibroblasts and all the precursor materials can rebuild those cells? Why do you want to put a tight ACE bandage around an area and squish it when your body has already said, I'm making this big, don't move it, let me fix it, right?
It's crazy.
It is crazy. And you take anti-inflammatory pills. What for? Your body wants the inflammation. What you're actually doing is you are now paving the way for a chronic injury because the full healing cannot take place. So you're only going to get partial healing, and you're going to get constant problems in that area. And you've met people who have a weak ankle because of this tennis injury, or I played football and now I have a bad knee. It's because they listened to their coaches and they didn't let the area fix itself fully, and now they have a chronic problem. But in the case of what they call TURP, transurethral prostate resection, they tell these men with these enlarged prostates that they're going to do something that's minimally invasive. They're just going to go in and they're going to do a resection of the prostate, which means they cut the thing down. They whittle it down. They cut pieces off it.
Oh, that's got to be good for you.
There you go. They do it by burning, cauterizing, to reduce its size. Now, this is their answer. Oh, it got too big? Well, make it smaller. Now it's going to fit. It's not going to press on your bladder. Okay. Does it take a genius to tell you this is not a good idea?
We're in America. Geniuses are hard to come by.
That's right. Geniuses are hard to come by. So most of allopathic medicine is invasive medicine with good ideas like this.
You know,
and
I think
so I put these things on my blog.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, I think what it is nowadays, at least overall, Big Pharma has pretty much taken over the healthcare industry. And I've talked to several whistleblowers that used to be doctors that literally wouldn't follow the system and broke a couple of stories. They literally got put on a do not work list, then a terrorist list. They left the country basically because they wouldn't follow orders of Big Pharma. And this one person I'm thinking of in particular, she exposed a pretty big agenda that was involved with millions and millions of dollars. And anyway, too bad for the circumstances that she had to go through, but she's happier than she's ever been. And it's just amazing the times that we live in. There's a trail of holistic doctors that have got these just very strange deaths. They release something a day or two before about how there's certain chemicals and vaccines and baby formula that basically causes vitamin D where your body won't create it. And it's insane. We live in crazy times.
No, I know. And I know the doctor you're talking about. And she lives in Panama. She's excellent. She's brilliant. She's got her own particular download. It's Jennifer Daniels. No, she is an absolutely amazing human being. It's worth going to her website and starting to listen to interviews that she's done. There are lots of them there, and there are lots of them on the internet. And
I had a great one on the Leak Project.
On the what?
On the Leak Project. I interviewed her a while ago. I had to plug my own channel there for a second.
Yes, sorry. I thought you said the Leaf Project.
No, that's okay.
Yes. No, she's fantastic. I'm so glad you interviewed her. And there are lots of people. For instance, the viral theory of disease. I've been looking into that. I haven't done any radio shows on that yet, but I will be. You see, the thing is this, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, so I have to really try to absorb what I'm studying and get a lot of background information as well, because you can't just tell me, throw big words around and expect lay people to know exactly what they are. I had to have a refresher course from Dr. Rima Lebo on osmosis. And then boom, dialysis suddenly appeared framed in a whole new way. And I realized, how could it possibly work? How could kidney dialysis work on the principles of osmosis? It's got to be doing harm. So I'm starting to study human biology and these medical invasions to figure out why the way invasive medicine wants to do something isn't a good idea. And most of the time it isn't. It's a bad idea. So I need to explain to myself why and how. And then when I can understand it enough to explain it to someone else, I generally throw it into a radio show somewhere. But again, I am not a doctor. I am not a scientist. I'm just a regular person trying to figure this out. Because it's too easy. When you take a term like transurethral prostate resection and you tell an innocent man who is having to go to the bathroom a lot, and he's in his 50s or 60s, that he needs this quick procedure, in and out, you can just come to the doctor's office and we'll do it in an hour and you'll be home, and etc. It'll be comfortable. It's never comfortable, but it'll be quick and easy. And then you realize what it is. Why would anyone allow that to be done?
They're looking for a quick fix. They have too much trust oftentimes in those that they look at that has authority. What was that experiment done many years ago where people saw an ad in the paper, they went to this interview and they said, okay, well, what we need you to do is sit down over here and there's somebody that's trying to quit smoking. They're on the other side of that window and we're going to ask you to push this button and it's going to hurt them just a little bit, but it's going to help them quit smoking, and just keep pushing the button every time we ask you to, okay? And they'll push the button to the point to where the person is literally screaming, going, oh my gosh, I can't take it anymore. And then okay, push the button again. And half of them, I don't know what the exact percentage of, I think it was more than half of the people would keep pushing that button. And it was all just a test. I mean, it wasn't real, but they literally thought they were zapping somebody to death because this doctor's like, oh, do it. It's okay. I've got a white coat on. You see my certificate up there? It's nice and it's got a frame on it. Looks good, doesn't it? It's got a gold seal to it.
Yes, it was Stanley Milgram from Yale, the Milgram experiment, social psychology.
Isn't that frightening?
It is frightening.
It's amazing.
It's completely frightening.
And just to add to what you were saying, if anybody's heard of the VMAT2 gene, it's the God gene essentially is what they've termed it, because it can allow certain chemicals of your body to be created, like dopamine and stuff like that. So if you can alter it and change it, it's going to affect the way that you think. And a lot of people feel that has a connection to source. It doesn't mean that if you lose that, you're going to lose your connection to God or your spirituality, but it might make it more difficult and change the way that you think. And if you go to Wikipedia and read about this, half of the words I have to look up on Google just to find out what it means. But if you really take the time and do it, then you can get an understanding. And when you read about some of the side effects of these vaccines, and they'll tell you right there, it's just using medical terms so you don't understand it. It's mind-boggling.
Yes, the principle of vaccination is equivalent to a rattlesnake bite.
And they like to give it to babies.
That's right, because vaccines contain debilitating neurotoxins and proteins. Snake bites are designed to damage the neuromuscular tissue in the prey, and vaccines effectively do the same thing. Now, nobody would say, I want a rattlesnake bite, would they?
Well, I do know of some people, there's this cult out there where they use rattlesnakes as a way of finding out if you've been saved or not. So,
well, I'm sure there aren't a lot of people in that cult.
It's dry humor, but there's truth in humor sometimes, because those cults really do exist.
Well, they may, but so the vaccine is delivered by a hypodermic needle, which is kind of like a fang, and it delivers complex molecules, proteins and oil molecules, into your bloodstream directly. Now, the normal way of things is that you don't get proteins and oils into your blood directly without going through the digestive tract, where they are addressed. The lipids are broken down and the proteins are broken down in the gut, and they're organized into what's called the amino acid pool in your body, from which endogenous viruses are created in answer to the ailments of your cells. So we make viruses. They're self-protein chains, and they go out to the frontiers of our body and they address damage and illness and disease and disrepair and that kind of thing. And our blood carries proteins and lipids on taxis. For instance, cholesterol is carried on a special taxi. It's called low-density lipoprotein. LDL is not cholesterol. It's a taxi cab for cholesterol. It takes the cholesterol to the cell for repair purposes. Then you have another protein called HDL, high-density lipoprotein. Lipoprotein just means I'm a protein that carries a lipid. So HDL takes the leftover cholesterol back to the liver to be recycled into a full new cholesterol. So that proteins are taxis. Hemoglobin is the protein that carries oxygen through the blood to the cells. Then you have myoglobin. That's the protein inside the cell that collects the oxygen and says, I'll carry this over to the nucleus. So proteins have specific functions, and in chains, they are sent out as repair agents. And those are the real viruses.
Yeah, I had not heard that before. That's fascinating.
So when you say the polio virus is in a lake or a swimming pool and it's waiting to make you sick, there's no exogenous polio virus. There's no Ebola virus. There's no AIDS virus. There's no flu virus.
Our bodies are creating it essentially to offset a protein.
No. Okay, let me give you an example. Now, this is my theory, and I'm not a scientist. I could be an idiot, and it's fine if you think I'm an idiot.
Well, at least you're thinking for yourself, right?
Yeah. So what's the cold? What is a cold? A cold is sniffling, blowing your nose, secreting mucus. It's different colors. You're coughing, you're spewing, you don't feel good. You have to lie low for a few days, right? So seasonally, as the weather changes, sunlight diminishes, and the temperatures get chillier. So your body has to fortify itself seasonally because it's got to deal with less sunlight. Sunlight makes vitamin D, which is a hormone. It's crucial to all kinds of body activities. But when the sun is not shining as long and as hard because it's out there going toward the Tropic of Capricorn, warming those people up, you have to fortify your tissues and your systems. You have to get some new cell layers going. So you end up releasing layers in your lungs, mucous membranes, and your body has to make more of them. So it takes an extra toll on you. You don't feel so good. You're detoxing. You have a detox reaction, fever, aches, pains, the runny nose, the coughing up of sputum of different colors. That really represents linings of the respiratory tract that are being exchanged. The pink lining is one, the green lining is another. And when you create the new linings, you have now rebuilt your respiratory system, your mucosal membranes, all of which are part and parcel of Th1 immunity, the cell-mediated gateway portal immune system. You've done a quick renovation, ready for winter. So you go to somebody's house, they're hacking, sneezing, coughing. You may pick up a resonant frequency from them. Your body may say, my God, I need to do this too. I need to renew and replenish all my linings. I better go home and get busy. So then you've caught a cold. You've simply picked up a signal. You might go to someone's house and they're hacking and coughing and spewing and sniffling, and nothing happens to you because you just did this 3 weeks ago. And you say, and everyone says, oh, it's a virus. You didn't catch it because you already had it.
This is making me think of the holographic universe theory that was written by Michael Talbot and the placebo effect that is so powerful. If we all break down to vibrational frequencies, yeah, it's a signal. So you're picking up a signal and your body's deciding whether it wants to use it or not. It reminds me of, depending on the type of software system you're using. If you're on the computer and somebody tries to send a virus to your computer, well, depending on the software you're using, it might or might not read that virus. So if it doesn't read the virus, it's as if it never was even there. That's very interesting the way you put that together. I like that hypothesis.
Yeah, listen. A virus, as it's used in technological terminology, is something that's dangerous. A virus in biology is not dangerous because we all make them. Now get this. Your body makes chemical and protein chains for repair purposes all the time. Your cells are communicating to your immune system. Hey, I'm tired. I'm weak. Oh, this hurts. I bumped my knee. Now I have a big bruise. Send me some help. And your body goes, all right, fine. I'm going to go to the amino acid pool. I'm going to pull this, and this together. I'm going to send it over there. So let's say you have an irritation of some kind. You get into poison ivy or you have a rash. And this is irritating. Your skin has received some injury. So repair materials are sent to the skin. Let's say a boy comes into a pediatrician's office and he has a rash, and the pediatrician looks and says, oh, he has measles. So the pediatrician takes a tissue sample from the boy, which is blood, and he puts it in his centrifuge. And this is exactly what Salk and Sabin did. They claim to be pediatricians, and so does Dr. Offit in New York, Paul Offit. And they put this blood sample, tissue sample, in a centrifuge, and they claim that they have now spun and isolated, because the centrifuge separates the liquid from the solid. They've isolated the measles virus. Here it is. This is the measles virus. This boy had measles. We got his blood. We put it in the centrifuge. Now we've got the measles virus. Do they have that? We don't know. We know that they have some stuff that the boy's body made to address his rash. And if you want to call that the measles virus, it was a virus made for a rash, right? But is it the measles virus? Well, I don't know. They look under a microscope and they see some things that look weird and they go, oh, here it is. Did you ever see that before? These are self-proteins that that boy's body made in answer to a condition. And then they take that gunk and they put it in petri dishes and they add stuff to it that's really gross. They add like animal embryos and animal feces and blood and pig's brains. And they put all kinds of fetid stuff in there because they know that this is what bacteria will grow on, right? So now that they have a big mess growing in their petri dishes, they clap their hands and say, we're growing the measles virus. Look, we have a culture. And then they take that culture and they have to stop it from growing. So they suspend it with toxic materials like phenol, aluminum, MSG, mercury, and then they have to make it bigger, just like you'd put water into paint to thin it out. So they use complex oil molecules for that. They used peanut oil in the 60s. I think it was adjuvant A64. These are called the adjuvants. And then they also use squalene now. They use oil of lecithin. And so they now have a virus culture, they call it even live virus, in this medium that they've added stuff to. And then they go and they inject that into people's bloodstream. So how is that going to benefit us? What happens is we have two immune systems, Th1, which is the gateway system, and that includes a lot of reflexes. That includes physical barriers like your skin, other mechanisms like hairs, the cilia in your lungs, those fine hairs. The cilia, you have some in your ear, you have it in your nose, your eyelashes are cilia. Your skin has cilia, the teeny weeny little hairs. They trap dust and such. And so you've got reflexes, you've got sneezing, coughing, you've got all your mucous membranes, you've got diarrhea and vomiting in your digestive tract. There are different ways that you can express and eject materials that come in through the portals and orifices. So that's the first line of immune defense. The second line is the antibody system. That's the Th2 or humoral immune system. So when you have these oils and proteins and other stuff injected right into your bloodstream, your Th2 immune system goes, oh my God, how did this get in here? What happened to the Th1? What were you doing? You were asleep. Now I have to overwork. And it over-triggers your humoral immune system into producing all kinds of antibodies. It produces across-the-board antibodies against this kind of oil, that kind of protein, this kind of this and that. And now you're in autoimmune dysfunction because your body's going to start attacking the squalene it makes because it got squalene delivered from outside through a vaccine. And squalene is an oil molecule that many animals depend on. It's the shark liver oil, for instance, in a shark's liver that keeps the great white shark swimming all the time. Squalene is in olive oil. So now you can't eat olives or anything with olive oil because your body doesn't like squalene because it came in through the vaccination. So it's an over-triggering of the antibody system.
That's why if you look at the statistics of neurological disorders, whether it be autism, Asperger's, or an immune system that attacks itself, essentially, there's, in my opinion, like you said, it doesn't take a genius. It could take somebody with an IQ of 70. If you've got common sense, you should be able to see a connection there. You know, you've got, I think, over 40 shots now that are mandated in order to go to school in California now by the time you're a certain age. And it's just mind-blowing when you look at what's actually in there, the different adjuvants, like you said, the squalene, and many of these vaccines now are made in China, so we don't know what's in them really. I mean, there could be all sorts of stuff in there that we don't even know about, so it's very unfortunate. I think that's probably one of the biggest weapons of mass destruction on mankind ever, in my opinion.
Well, getting them popularized and trusted is definitely subversive, and to get people to think that vaccines prevent disease. Instead, they create other kinds of harm that you aren't going to attribute to your vaccines. So, and the fact that they administered this kind of injury to children as often as they do, when older people were young, they didn't get vaccines on this kind of a schedule, but now they're getting them very frequently. And the kids you see, I asked a vaccine researcher once, but the kids aren't dying from this. Yes, they are definitely getting to be autistic in higher and higher numbers, particularly the males, but they're also suffering from learning disorders, autoimmune issues, allergies, and these are all things that, didn't happen in previous generations, not at this rate. So she pointed out to me, and I think it's a very good distinction, that children are not thriving today. You watch kids and they sniffle and they have bad attention span and they're just kind of whiny and irritable, and they're lagging, And I think she's right.
That is so sad when you put it that way. Wow, it really is unfortunate, the world that we live in some ways. There's moments of greatness and glimpses of amazing opportunities, and then on the other side of the coin, there's just all this, what I keep calling dark ecstasy or black energy, just negative, dark forces that feed off of goodness. Now, there's got to be a balance somewhere. I mean, I just want to throw this out there for our audience that has an opportunity to listen to this podcast. What would it be like if we lived in a society where we were rewarded for helping others, if we could actually come up with something that would be, an alternative energy source and not get suppressed by big oil, come up with an invention that would actually heal somebody and not get killed in some crazy accident. Could you imagine what it'd be like if people at the top levels actually cared about you, myself, and future generations, this planet, and wanted to protect it and keep some type of harmonious balance like the natives did?
Right, and I have gotten into corporate government by commerce. That's what I was doing slightly before I started doing underground bases, and now all this other weird stuff I'm into. But when you have a societal structure where the dispensation of a lot of the mechanisms that keep us in order, that dispensation is controlled by officials in corporate office, which they are. All the government is corporate now. Even the towns and cities have all incorporated. So all corporate activity is conducted by contract, and it's all commercial. So you are getting government agencies that are corporate subdivisions of the corporate federal charter. And these agencies are acting on contractual bases, and everybody in them is under contract to do something or other. And contract and commerce involve money, and the money is simply unending. It's borrowed and borrowed and borrowed and borrowed. It dribbles down the pyramid. It's paid out to all the people working in the cities, the towns, the hospitals, the police departments, and everybody is going home to put bread on their table with this money that they don't realize is ruining their lives.
I mean, certainly money can be used for good or bad. And the way that we have fiat currency now, if you look at the pyramid of where it all goes, it's hundreds of trillions of dollars in debt that will probably never be able to be paid back. You're just going to continue to add more zeros at the end of the one. So with that said, really the monetary system that we live in is based on consumerism, based on our confidence, combined with obviously the clandestine hand. When they want to pull the strings at the top levels, I'm sure there's going to be a domino effect. Yet we do have a part of this alchemy, this fiat currency, because if you think about it, alchemy is creating or transmuting something. It's either creating something out of nothing or changing something. And that's what fiat currency actually is. It's a giant form of alchemy. And if we could find a way to really just change the system as far as benefiting others, helping others, creating balance, I think that the monetary system could be a good thing. But when you have these giant megacorps that usurp up all the new technologies because it might affect the bottom line for them and their stockholders, there's got to be some way we can... Because it's like we're in this slow boil process where we're frogs in this water that's getting a little bit warmer, a little bit warmer, a little bit warmer. I don't think that the powers that be are going to drop a hammer at once. until we're all so dilapidated and lazy that there's not people like you and myself out there waking up the masses. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right that money, even fake money, fiat money, can be deployed toward a good end if only the intention at the top were that. Because you can dribble all kinds of borrowed money down the pyramid and you can put up roads and schools and all the good stuff, you know, instead of these black programs that hurt us. But the problem is that we don't have that kind of origin in terms of intention. We have an intention that promotes sepsis. And this is the other thing I was going to get into. You need, in the cycle of life, you need antisepsis and life-giving time and energy, and then you need the energy of sepsis. So I'm going to explain this now. I found this in a Flat Earth video. It was a little aside, and I went, wow, this is so amazing. So this guy described different qualities, distinctly different qualities of sunlight and moonlight. The sun gives us golden light that's warm, drying, life-giving, preservative, antiseptic, and cleansing, right?
Okay,
And we need sunlight. We need sunlight. The plants need it to make their food. We need it to make our vitamin D, which is so important to so many different processes. We need it for our mental health, the whole pineal gland, melatonin, all of that stuff. Okay, the moon gives off a silver light that's cold, damp, and promotes necrosis, sepsis, and putrefaction. Absolutely true. What happens at night? Night is when the molds and the fungi and the microbes get to work, when it's dark and the sun isn't there, because the sun kills microbes and molds. So the nighttime is necessary for the molds and the fungi to turn the dead life forms, whether they're big trees or animal carcasses or whatever, into nutrients that start the life process at the bottom of the trophic chain. So the trophic chain starts with producers. Producers are plants. They don't go out and hunt for food or gather it. They make their food from sunlight. That's why you need the sun. The producers are consumed by other animals. And those would be, there's a whole chain of consumers. There are small animals that eat plants, or even large animals that eat plants. But then there are animals that eat those animals and other ones above them that eat those. So there's like a whole chain of consumption that starts with plants and sunlight. And then at the very top of it, you get the apex consumers that don't have predators in their area. In the ocean, it's the white shark and the bull shark and the tiger shark and some whales, toothed whales. In Siberia and cold, like North Dakota, it's the timber wolf. In the Arctic, it's the polar bear. In India, it's the tiger. In Africa, it's the lion, right? So there are these apex, some people call them predators or apex consumers. And when they die, they are descended on by the scavengers like vultures and whatnot, hyenas that rip their carcasses and take everything edible off. And then when you get the bones and the fur left there, that's when the fungi come and the microbes, and they'll turn that into nutrients for the bottom of the trophic chain all over again. So what I realized is happening is that, let's just call them the perps, they have taken this necessary duality of the day and night, the sepsis and antisepsis cycle, and they're pushing it into constant sepsis, constant necrosis, constant degradation. So we're being assaulted by programs that cause us to decline more than thrive. And we are in breakdown mode from almost everything. And you can't live that way. But this suits the solutions and the theft of our energy and our assets in the effort that they're going to try to make to quote unquote help us. So they're promoting disease by telling you to do this and do that. Invasive medicine just creates, big pharma just creates more physical problems and psychological as well, energetic problems. And this is the sepsis cycle. There's a way too much sepsis going on right now. And that seems to be the agenda of the borrowing of money. It's being dribbled down the pyramid, the structures of control, in order to push us into more and more and more decline, more and more necrosis, more and more sepsis.
What do you think is next for us as a society? Where do you see this going?
I honestly don't know. I watched this video about the trees. It's about it was originally titled No Forests on Flat Earth. And I have some thoughts about that, which are actually encouraging. But for the most part, humanity is unaware. I was going to say blissfully unaware, but I will say dreadfully unaware of what they're participating in and actually helping. And
Okay.
that to me is the real challenge, is that energetically people have been taken advantage of because they have permitted it. And I see in metaphysical terms that this gives the originators and executors of these intentions the right to continue, because we aren't saying no. No is a very powerful word, and we're not saying no, not enough of us. And instead we are the willing slaves already in the financial system, producing assets and wealth that we very, happily spend on these corporations, on these programs, because we just don't want to become aware. And either we refuse to, or we can't manage the awareness. I was explaining to somebody today the term ego strength. I said most people don't have the ego strength to face what's really going on. And she asked me to define that. And I did. I said, I gave her an example, like, what if you found out that your brother was a murderer or something, would you be able to handle it? You would probably, many people would say, I don't believe you, and walk away in denial. So denial is one aspect of not foraging for enough personal ego strength to assimilate and accept what's really going on. And then the continued participation. Well, I need my job, so I'll be a school teacher and I'll teach this baloney to my students because I'm supposed to. I have to retire. I have to have enough money to live on when I'm retired, and I just can't stop now. It's too late. That kind of thing,
Absolutely. It really is unfortunate for a lot of people because they're kind of stuck in many situations. And that's why I think it's important to, whatever your career is, if you're passionate about your job or your career, how cool is that? Because if you really feel like you're doing the right thing, whatever it is, if your conscience is telling you that it is the right thing, I can't judge you based on that because I'm not your judgment. So I certainly appreciate people that are willing to risk it all and take one position that might not benefit them as far as being in this cush opportunity lifestyle that's more comfortable. They're willing to take that jump. It reminds me of the superhuman or like the good guys versus the bad guys. You've always got the arch villain and then the superhero. And the superheroes typically can't have a girlfriend. They can't be too close to their friends. They usually don't have a lot of money, and they're attacked by people that they're trying to help. And then the supervillain's got all the money, got all the women, got all the toys, got all the luxuries and fames and fortunes. And it's like, why would you want to be a superhero anyway? Well, because some people just have that archetype where they want to help people, and they'll put their lives and personality, but they'll put themselves on the line essentially to help others because that's their path.
Yeah, it has to do with your ethics as well. There's a difference, I think, between ethics and morality. Ethics is what you make and hold for yourself. Morality is what's shared around you. And a lot of people, for instance, I just came across this term, moral truth versus material truth. People would rather watch stuff on TV about the ISIS crisis, just exploding out of control, and all these ISIS people are killing us everywhere, because it fits with the moral reality of what they're hearing. This is what they've heard about ISIS. Oh, now look, here, they did it again. Here in this country or this country, and now it's going to come to America. What are we going to do? Instead of the material truth, which is, hey, this is all made up, and you're expected to believe it, and it's paid for by commercial contract, and all these cities and agencies have wanted to get SWAT teams and more militarization, so they've all scheduled and received money for drills and exercises, and it's going on everywhere so that your life can become more curtailed, and you can be surveilled and told what to do and what not to do, because there's an enemy lurking out there, and that enemy has come from foreign shores right into your own house.
But Al Qaeda's going to get me. I got to give away my guns and take these vaccines, or ISIS might come shoot me right now.
That's it. That's it.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, this has just been a real pleasure to speak with you, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. I know that you've got a great website, and I'd recommend our listeners go to aboutthesky.com. You can read up on the blogs, and there's different topics: geoengineering, global warming, population control, tree decline, Magellans, the body snatchers, media tricks, a lot of stuff on here. And before we close out tonight, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience? And once again, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me. And I would like to point the audience to my store, avatarproducts.com, where I share things that I've discovered that have helped me in this road toward, you could call it replenishment, fortification, remediation of self. So definitely visit the store and the website. The easiest way to go to my blog page is Sofia with an F, smallstorm.com. And I do put stuff up there every day or two that has rocked me most recently. And watch the videos, go to the links, read the articles. It's not boring stuff, and it will really make your mind start ticking.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I, once again, really appreciate you coming on. And folks, I would also recommend you go to leakproject.com. Check out our guest section. We've had over 200 full feature podcasts and interviews with some amazing people. And also, if you use the code LEAKPROJECT at many of our guest sections there, you can access their products for a discount and extra benefit. And have a wonderful day, everybody. Be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and tonight's guest is Sofia Smallstorm. Now, Sofia's website is available at aboutthesky.com, and she has just a bounty of topics here, everything from weather modification, geoengineering, global warming, population control, Magellans, body snatchers, media tricks, all sorts of stuff, even her own blog there if you'd like to know more. And also, she has a website called Avatar Products. Now, I went to this website earlier today and it wasn't working, but hopefully it'll be back up again soon. And I also want to let you know that our website, leakproject.com, we've had a lot of people ask me recently when our store is going to be up, because I've been promoting this now for quite some time. Well, we finally got it up and it's ready to go. Just go to leakproject.com/shop and you'll be able to see our new shirts, high quality decals. We've got discounts with many of the guests we've had on the show with their products, like Gerald Clark from GeraldClark77.com, as well as Krista Clark from Artistic Vegan. We're working something out with Doc Ram, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. And also check out the Juice Plus promotions that we're offering right now in pill form, guys. How cool is this? You can get 30 fruits and vegetables in pill form. Think about that for a minute. Not synthetic BS, but real fruits and vegetables condensed into pill form, 30 of them, and just a couple pills a day. So check that out on our website, and also go to youtube.com/clandestine Time Lord. If you subscribe to YouTube, you'll get access to all the latest podcasts absolutely free. And we're offering extra promotions on our website at Leak Project, where we do offer certain podcasts downloadable for free, ad-free as well. So I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are, and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon. So I'm on your website right now, aboutthesky.com. Maybe, Sophia, you could tell us a little bit about yourself and why you got into chemtrails. And also, you've kind of gone from chemtrails to now something even bigger and nastier, right?
Well, I wouldn't say nastier. I mean, this is all qualitative, isn't it? Comparative. Mm-hmm. But yes, I did start out actually in 9/11 analysis, and then I kind of switched over to chemtrails because they were very rampant and sort of confounding. And from there, I started to see that they had their real goals, you could say. They're not conscious, of course, but the goals seem to be to integrate a kind of synthetic biology in the living organisms of the world. And I became aware that synthetic biology was a close cousin of radiation biology, and that it seemed that everything was being moved into and toward becoming frequency responsive. So we do have this, explosion of frequency around us in terms of the wireless industry, and everybody is clearly addicted to that. And I think there's a reason for this addiction. We're voluntarily participating in frequency fondness, you could say.
Okay. So what does that mean essentially? I mean, do you think that we're kind of like plugged into an AI system and we basically don't even realize it, kind of frequencies they'll send out will make people think certain ways overall, or?
I think it's deeper than that. The biological use of frequency in the body is upon crystalline forms. There is a relationship between crystals and voltage that is recognized in the piezoelectric effect. The piezoelectricity is that it's a wireless form of electricity, in that when you place a frequency upon a crystal, it will generate a voltage, and when you place a voltage on a crystal, it will generate a frequency. We already use piezoelectricity. We have crystalline proteins in our DNA. We've got a lot of crystalline substances in our bones and so forth, and we evidently use these crystals in our basic biochemical work. Okay, I'm not a scientist, so I can't go into the depths of the details, but it's already something the body uses. But the more you proliferate crystalline forms into biological organisms, and the more frequencies you put on these organisms, you're going to start changing the way that biology works. And that's what I think is at the root of all this.
Now, when it was pitched to the federal government as a form of keeping global warming at bay, essentially, do you think that everybody knows about this? I mean, obviously there's applications, multiple applications for chemtrails. They've got weather changing opportunities, seeding the clouds for rain, causing drought, etc. So they can apply multiple things. Do you think they're beta testing certain areas to do this, or do you think it's kind of on a global scale? Or, I mean, is there any science to back this up?
Well, I don't really know what you mean by science, because it's quite clear that the science that's published and reported on and shared as and thought to be, reliable, commendable, worthy of distinction and passing it along in universities and on TV. This is a fraudulent science. It has elements of accuracy in it, but it's being deployed and used in very fraudulent ways. And I'm not, in that regard, any kind of scientist. And I don't think that when you put common sense to science, you're going to get any kind of equation that works. Anybody can see in the world that we have streaky, gunky clouds, and that our picturesque clouds, the puffy ones, the cumulonimbus, and the various integrated forms of clouds that we used to see, cumulostratus, cirrostratus, these have all disappeared. They're permanently gone. We're never going to see a mare's tail in the sky again. That used to be a form of cirrus cloud that appeared late in the evening and was at very high altitude, 35, 40,000 feet, and looked like a mare's tail. You don't see that. You see an artificial cirrus form now all the time at a much lower altitude, and it's composed of, materials that are artificially gathered, we could say. The premise remains the same in that they've studied cloud formation using condensation nuclei, and they've learned how to use atmospheric moisture, pull it together, make it very, very fine in terms of the droplet size, and thereby they get a haze. This is the typical white haze we see. But there's weather control, afoot. There's the deployment of materials which ultimately descend earthward, and they embed themselves in living forms. And that is all nanobiology, the artificial synthetic biology going to work in the living things that are dependent on the earth and its water and its soil and the products of soil for sustenance.
I talked to Dr. Richard Allen Miller yesterday, and he's got an IQ which is literally off the charts. He's been doing research into many fields for many years, and he was talking about some bio-API stuff. And one thing that I find interesting is you said science is not valid, yet there's plenty of valid science out there. I did a show the other day where we basically compiled that there's 6 corporations that control about 90% of the scientific data. So obviously it can be skewed, but there's still some pretty good stuff out there. And I've even seen white papers and documents about the certain products and chemicals and chemtrails and the applications that they're used for. And it's some pretty nasty stuff. Now, what I was referring to, though, is you were talking about the crystalline, essentially. So I was wondering if you had any insider info to actually show those nanoparticulates that many people can see fall from the skies, especially if you've got polarized sunglasses on at the time, that can actually verify, yep, this is some type of crystalline substance. And then what they do is they take the Wi-Fi or the signal from this tower or that tower to affect your personality, essentially.
Well, to start with, you can't see anything that's nano. Nano is less than a micron in size. And nano is the realm in which the operations are taking place that are altering biology. That's what I'm theorizing here. So what you're
True
seeing,
nano. Okay.
yeah, what you're seeing that's dropping is people see fibers, fibrous masses that accumulate on balcony railings and car antennas. And you can look in the microscope and see materials that are not identifiable in laboratories in the sense that they match any known natural fiber. So the fibers appear to be polymer-based and synthetic. And then there are, of course, other materials in chemtrails as well. And there are other people who've done a lot more work on this than I have in recent years. I kind of left the whole chemtrail scene. I left that part of my website up because it was represented a lot of work and there was good basic information there. But to start looking into how chemtrails dovetail with many other agendas makes more sense to me at this point than simply studying them by themselves and hoping that they're going to stop. And nobody's going to stop spraying chemtrails unless there's some kind of saturation that's already been achieved and the program can be converted into something else that's achieving another goal on the next level. So we're obviously in a world that has a lot going on that is redesigning our environment and us within our own cellular structure.
Just this very dark world that we live in. Where are you pointing your energy now?
Well, I've written about, I guess I have a newsletter that people can subscribe to, and in that I cover on a monthly basis some of the stuff I'm falling into. And it's really just kind of a self-propelled, accidental, by accident I come across something and start getting into it. So one of the things that caused a big splash was the underground bases. And I have reason to believe, again, I could be wrong, but the habitats being created underground are going to be the retreat to which the executors of these programs will go when there is enough destruction that is sort of like self-perpetuating above ground. Because right now there's a tremendous amount of resilience in biology, and it always seems to know how to spring back in some way. Even though it's been debilitated, it'll still spring back. And I think that when you look at the network of caves and caverns, underground rivers, the presence of what's called primary water, we live on secondary water up here. The evaporation and rain cycle is just, it's minuscule. It's peanuts compared to what is underground, billions and billions of gallons of fresh water being replenished, self-replenishing water. That's the real water supply, and yet we're not allowed access to it. But the CERN program in Europe, which has to do with nuclear radiation, the opening of various tunnels, the tunneling itself they tell us on the surface that this is simply a little train tunnel, or it's a tunnel for cars through a mountain pass. But the amount of time it takes to build these tunnels and the amount of hidden rooms and passageways and doors and levels that they have speaks to the tunnels being a portal or entry to a much more giant scale habitat. And that will be equipped by nuclear power, most likely. There were a lot of missing nuclear reactors. After the Arab oil embargo, the United States got all gung-ho on nuclear power. And for instance, the Tennessee Valley Authority, Tennessee is not a big state, it commissioned the erection of all these nuclear power facilities, some 17 of them, and only 5 actually were completed. So 12 of them were begun, in some cases reactors delivered, and never removed. And the cave system and the system of underground lakes and rivers is enormous underneath Tennessee, Virginia, Indiana. It goes all the way down to Alabama. The mountain ranges are what we see on top, and underneath you're looking at excavations that were formed either naturally or somehow that are big enough to fly planes in. So this, I think, is where the controlling world is going to go. And you'll see at the Denver airport all kinds of murals